can we talk about the female triad
Mhm,
and
mhm.
educate me and the rest of the listeners there, if you don't mind?
Okay, so sure. So the female triad is something that we've kind of learned and been studying for a while, and it's actually kind of what gave birth to our understanding of relative energy deficit for sport. So it started where we understood that female athletes who were either intentionally and selectively reducing and not eating enough food, or they had a disordered eating pattern. So they were not consuming enough food. Either they were training a lot and not consuming enough to match their training, or they were intentionally restricting food. So this doesn't just happen in female athletes, but it's specifically developed for the athlete triad. So they're under consuming nutrition either because they aren't matching their energy needs or they're intentionally restricting nutrition and they have disordered eating issues. And then we start to see fluctuations and changes in their period. Either it becomes really inconsistent, or they completely lose their cycle altogether and they become amenorrheic. And then we also see the changes, the other piece of the triad. So the first piece of the triad is the change in eating patterns and the lowered eating patterns, either because they aren't eating enough to match their training or they're intentionally disordered eating. And then we see the changes in their cycle. So either
So that's
intermittent
the
or
second part.
And then the third part is the bone density piece. We see a drop and a decrease in their bone density. So that's the triad. Now, that triad, like I said, has given birth to the much bigger dynamic, which we also know also impacts male athletes, which is the relative energy deficit for sport. And to talk back to what and mention back what Lori was saying, there are things that we see starting to happen in these female athletes that we can flag sooner than the bone density loss and sooner than the loss of their period. So if you're seeing your female athlete getting sick more frequently, she might be in relative. It's worth checking in and seeing, is she getting enough fuel energy? If you see her not recovering well, female athletes do not recover well. Most athletes don't recover well in a low energy availability state, but female athletes are much more susceptible. So we don't take in training stress and convert it over into those adaptations. So when Lori was saying like, wow, this wrestler shows up at the beginning of season looking this way, but where did they go by February, March? Somewhere in there, we were starting to see their performance decrease because they weren't recovering well.